Good evening. How are all of you? Okay, so first let me know, where are you joining in from today? Very good. Same here. You feeling good? This is awesome. Fantastic. I'm from San Francisco, Seattle, Austin, Bellevue, Farmland, New York, Virginia. Fantastic. So the session that we have today is really a hands-on workshop, really how to build a cloud solutions for enterprise, really simplifying that concept for you. Are you all ready for it? This is like the heavy topic, but once you know it, you can't really remove it from your mind. Okay, so for one more question for you before we get started. If you had one word to describe Women in Cloud Summit 2021, what would it be? Thank you. That was the word we were hoping we could accomplish. Thank you so much. So generous, yes. Informative, empowering. That was the same intention. So we are glad we have accomplished that. How many of you met someone new at the summit? Yes? Did you meet someone new? Fantastic. Okay, so let's go to what to expect right now. Going to the next slide. So here is the session agenda. We have some fantastic speakers. So we will be talking with Sushma Nalpeta is here, Didi Walsh, and myself. So Sushma is like VP and Head of Engineering at Apartment List. Didi is VP and Marketing and Development at Mobilize.net. And then you have me. So all three of us are going to talk about different pieces of solution building. So going to the next. So in this next 1 hour, here's what you're going to learn: how to build the enterprise business model and also a strategic narrative for enterprise solution. If you're in the accelerator, you'll know what I'm talking about, but if you're trying to build a solution, how do you go about it? Next is how to build is a technology solution architecture and a user experience. That's what Sushma is going to come and talk about. And third is how to build a successful development project for your idea. And then we go into Q&A. And so a lot of the solutions have been listed at the Women in Cloud Solution Marketplace. So you can go and check out what these enterprise solutions are. If you have any questions, use the Q&A tab so we can actually have a great conversation and answer your question. Okay, going to the next one. So we have some really cool giveaways for this session. So it's the Women in Cloud Think Book. So whoever is going to have a strong engagement on chat, cheer Didi and Sushma, ask some relevant inquiries. We will pick the winners, and we have the freedom to pick how many winners we need. So the more you're active, you will be considered for this particular giveaway. Okay, so when we think about the cloud solutions business model, so the first thing you need to know is the recurring revenue. That is the business model for when you're thinking about cloud solutions. As you think about all the solutions and all the products and services are moving into the subscription models, which is MRR or ARR. So MRR is monthly recurring revenue and ARR is the annual recurring revenue. You need to think about from a recurring revenue concept when you're building is the technology solution. Otherwise, what happens is you can't sell a product or a box and then hope that you can go fix it, because your meter on the cloud is really based on a recurring revenue. You have to pay them every month. So your solution also has to define the same architecture. The second piece of, go to next. One slide before, Blake. So when you're thinking about, now that you know that recurring business model is your the new business model that is in existence, there are two licensing models that you need to think about as you're thinking about your solution. One is the net seats model, which is a user-based subscription. So for example, Office 365, G Suite, Beautiful AI, Smartsheet, they're all designed on a net seats model. And the net seats model allow you to really license your product on a user-based subscription on a monthly or a yearly basis. So that's the first model. The second model is the metering model, which is a consumption model, which applies to like Azure or AWS, Google Cloud, and some of the other technology solution, which is based on the consumption usage. So when you're thinking about your solution, you have to think about which business model am I designing. You cannot combine those two because it becomes very difficult to implement. When you're in the enterprise model, the net seats model has a higher propensity to use rather than the metering model because it's very hard to figure out what does that consumption looks like. Whereas net seats, it's much easier to do pilots, much easier to have a discussion and also go into an agreement that makes sense. Metering is unpredictable, so it's really hard. And if you're using, any of the cloud products, there's always anxiety is if the consumption goes higher, what do I do? So that's why you need to think about as you're designing your product for the enterprise. Next one. So when you're thinking about the solutions, there are multiple ways of how you can build your solution. These are all the licensing scenarios. You can develop a mobile app, and then you can have is your recurring revenue model on top of it, or you can do an AI-enabled business process. That's your solution. Or you can build and host portals, or you can do a backup and recovery solution, or you can go from an annual-based to consumption-based kind of solutions you can put together, or build your own apps, which your platform as service. There are multiple scenarios of how you can build your own technology solution, either ground up, or you can connect multiple things and put it together. So when you're thinking about how about the upfront and the subscription and usage, Michael, when you're thinking about it, you actually are doing is the upfront is usually the pilot. The subscription is the annual agreement that you have to in place. That is the best way for the customer to get engaged. Okay. Next. So there are 4 areas of monetization that happens in the enterprise world. The first, so there's a circle on the right. It takes you average 6 months to up to 2 years to win it. So you really have to start with the understanding what the customer needs. So assessment is a very good way of engaging with them. Second is writing your strategic narrative. That will help you design what your business model is. Then you target your customers and put your offer. You pitch and win, and then you have as a world-class implementation, and you repeat and rinse on winning your customers. But the way you have to look at it, every time you're going into any customer, always have a proof of concept pricing. In an enterprise market, it's less than 25 would be a successful proof of concept number. Anytime you go with it, it'll be very hard. You cannot really sell $1 million deal with the first one. Usually it starts with a pilot and then goes into a bigger contract. The second one is the monthly recurring revenue. In your contract, you need to be very clear what does that monthly recurring revenue looks like. Third idea is upselling via custom engagement. That could be consulting or different kind of projects you can do that can help you upsell. And the last one, if you're reselling, Google, Azure, or Amazon, you can do is that margins that you can make. So those are kind of your 4 areas of monetization as you think about your selling your solution. So once you have the business model right, now you have to say, okay, what's my value proposition for the customer? You basically have to write, this is a very simplest way. We have taken all the accelerator participant. It takes time. It looks very simple, but it takes a lot of time. And if there are entrepreneurs who have gone through it, they know how much effort it takes to put everything in one place. So what you do is you write your solution name. It tells you exactly the customer you are empowering and what are the benefits you're going to provide through the solution and how is it different for all the solutions. So when you're pitching, you're actually telling the customer what the value proposition is. You're not doing as a generic statement. You're really making sure your scenarios are very clear for an enterprise customer. Once you have this work done, you go into building your business model, which is your design model on it. So Blake, if you go to the next one, is your enterprise value creation. You know exactly the customer segment you're working on, how you work with the customer relationship. You have to be very clear what the value proposition for a customer looks like. What value do you deliver the customer today? What is one of the customer problem that you're going to help them solve? what are the bundles of products that they are offering for each of the customer segment, which customer needs that you have to satisfy in the enterprise ecosystem, and which solutions can help you achieve the same vision. And then you write down what are the key business processes you are going to help them. Then you come and talk about the resources you would need to support the customer and which partnerships you have to have in place. That will give you what are the cost structures and your revenue stream. Your revenue stream should at least be two. One is your pilot, as well as your recurring revenue model. And if you're reselling, that would be your third one. So those will be your minimum 3 revenue streams when you're thinking about an enterprise value proposition. So that kind of is a very quick way to understand how to put together is your value creation model. With that, I'm going to hand over to Sushma. She'll come and talk about, now that I have an idea, I have all the pieces, how am I going to build my technical solution roadmap? So Sushma, first I would like you to introduce yourself and then take them through the technology solution implementation journey.
Thanks, Chaitra. Those were some amazing nuggets. Hey, everyone, super excited to be here. I'm Sushma. I lead engineering team at Apartment List. Our engineering team is about 50. So one of the key points Chaitra touched upon is understanding the customer you're solving the problem for. So today I want to focus on how do we bring these ideas to reality? What does that process journey look like? So there are 3 important pillars, as you see here, to consider when you think about a solution implementation. One is the team structure itself. A famous author called Patrick Dixon once said, mission is at the heart of what you do as a team. Goals are merely steps to its achievement. Teams that rally around a mission are the ones that are most excited, most successful, and most energized. When we form teams, we should definitely look at a composition as one of the key elements. The second pillar is the collaboration itself. So we have a mission. Now we put the right people together. Now we should just expect them to collaborate well, right? Wrong. They don't always happen organically. Collaborations have to be aided to remove some of the inefficiencies on the team. And we'll dive into each of those in a moment. And lastly, the technical aspect itself and the decisions around architecture that we make that usually guide the success as well as the longevity of a project, product, feature, solution that you might be building. So let's dive into each of these. Next slide, please. So the first one is the team structure itself. So there are many ways to organize teams depending on your organization composition, but I want to talk about 2 prominent methods here. So one is the functional teams, and the second one is the mission-driven teams. Functional teams are usually common during the early stage of a company or even when you're building a platform or a solution ground up. So if, for example, you're building a brand new website ground up, or you're building a native app because you found great adoption on your web platforms and now you want to expand into other areas. You might be building a SaaS product or a B2B solution. For a lot of these, like when you're trying to build something from scratch, functional team composition makes sense. But however, if you're trying to build a feature or a product that involves identifying the right customer problem, like you don't even have a customer problem yet, that involves doing market research, that involves building some prototypes, validating your hypothesis, running A/B tests, and validating if this idea can actually become reality, you're better off with mission-driven teams. I've worked at startups as well as enterprise, and I have actually most of the time leaned on forming mission-driven teams, unless it's like really early stage or it's tech heavy, because I think those teams enable better collaboration long term. And the reason for this composition is like really simple. If you're building a platform which is very tech heavy, this structure of functional teams provides the most efficiencies because the balance is tipped more towards engineering. You need that team to be focused on that one problem, and there are a lot of technical decisions to be made. So you actually let that team focus, and there is one person normally trying to interface with the stakeholders and bringing those requirements in. But otherwise, if it's a more balanced team, you have way too many touch points for one person to carry on. So it leads to more inefficiencies, and you're better off organized as a mission-driven teams. And historically, like when companies that build solutions to enterprise have tried to organize as functional teams, like usually with like one product project manager or one person coordinating in the middle, it's not sustainable long-term because of the gaps that can exist in that communication. And two, it's a single point of failure. And if this person leaves or has to go on a vacation, then you start to have a lot of communication gaps. As now startups have been evolving, we see the second structure, which is the mission-driven team, being more common to form a team that drives better collaboration. So next slide, I want to talk about how can we aid better collaboration. Next slide, please. So, one of the biggest pieces here is how can we convert UI concepts to working prototypes, and how can we do that with better collaboration? So there are three key steps here. One is identifying the user problem through research. And the second one is defining the right OKRs, like objectives and key results. And then lastly, it's the right tools and systems. Before you start on any project, you need to be in tune with two things. One is your user you're solving the problem for, and your brand. So the user, basically, what problems are they facing, trying to understand if it's valuable to solve this problem. Is it one user or many users facing this problem? What does the scale of that problem look like? And on the brand side, you want to understand the brand and the feature or the product that you're trying to build. How does that align with the brand vision and goals long term? So on one side, you're trying to understand the user problem, and on the other side, you're trying to understand what the core goals of the brand are to create that alignment. And secondly, once you have that goal, you need to define a path to get there and path to accomplish that goal. Still on the previous slide, please. How do I validate if these paths are right at each and every step? That is your OKR. At my company, we define objectives as user problems we want to solve first. And then key results are the results by which you want to validate if these problems are solved. Like these are, you can treat these as metrics. So a user problem would be like, apartment list is a two-sided marketplace. So as a renter, I am not able to find the properties that I need very quickly. And then a key result might be the one way to accomplish that is to aid better discovery. And I'll validate better discovery by these hypotheses. And this is how I'm going to measure them. When it comes to a B2B or an enterprise solution, it's the same thing. I want to sell this particular product. I want to build adoption to this particular solution, and how will I actually measure that the adoption has actually occurred? And then lastly, the right tools, the collaboration between designers, engineers, collaboration between the product managers, engineers, and designers, user researchers. How can you aid? You can only do that with having the right tools. So some of the tools that we use at every step, at least for the design collaboration between design and engineering, we use Figma. Like how engineers have peer review process, how they have version control, where they can manage different changes that have occurred. Similarly, on the design side, we want to be able to do the same. And then as those changes occur, we want engineers to be notified that, okay, I have changed this asset and I've changed this flow, and now take a look and then use those assets. So you want to have the right set of tools. The second thing that we also do is design system. This is basically a system that you maintain to drive consistency across the brand. What does your typography look like? What does your how should your buttons look? How should what do your brand guidelines dictate? What type of colors do you want to have on your product or your solution? Having that right design system helps with efficiencies long term as well. So the next slide, I want to talk about the development considerations. So as we think about building a solution and bring it to a real world, These are like the four main considerations. So one is the architecture itself. So how many people I need to build my solution for, and like the scale a lot of times is extremely important to identify early on. The reason is the scale determines the architecture style, it determines how I want to deploy this. If it's a small set of users, if you're at the beginning of that product life cycle, you might want to decide to just build a monolithic application. But if you want to scale it to millions and billions of users, then you might actually change your entire architecture. So how many users are you going to support? What type of architecture style you want to support? How do you see it evolving over a period of time? How do I make sure that my system is up and running without any issues? And if there are issues, how can I ensure I jump in and fix the problem pretty quickly? So logging, monitoring, solutions like it could be Datadog, it could be Splunk, application monitoring, logging, all these solutions are extremely important to figure out early on in the life cycle. And then lastly, the deployment aspect. Are you going to enable continuous integration, continuous deployment? Do you want, the moment you make a change, do you want to wait for a release cycle? Do you want to push it to production immediately? And if you do, how do you actually validate everything is accurate? So that brings me to the second point about testing and rollout. So how do I actually create tests early on? Do I actually form a process called test-driven development? Are the teams using the right test cases? Are they making sure that any changes that I make are validated? And especially with enterprise solutions, you need to extremely be aware that it can impact businesses and it can impact revenue in a huge way, even with a small issue. So you want to get some of those thinking early on in the life cycle. The second thing is around A/B tests. There are enterprise solutions like Slack or Microsoft Teams, and if I want to test out a new feature, do I want to do an A/B test? Do I want to do a stage rollout, like where I release this feature for 10% of my users and see how it's performing, and then maybe slowly roll it out to 25, 30, 50, and so on. And lastly, what type of metrics I want to measure. In a SaaS product, is it a registration metric? Do I want to measure the number of users that I'm driving to the platform? Do I want to measure the engagement itself, the time spent on a particular app? And the third one that's very key is infrastructure. How am I going to deploy this? Infrastructure, almost always, these decisions are directly proportional to the cost that you're actually going to be spending, your OpEx. So you want to make the right decisions, keeping the number of users and scaling considerations in mind. So do I want to deploy this in the data center or the cloud? Do I want a disaster recovery strategy, like where if something bad happens, what is my strategy to switch over to a different cloud provider? Do I go hybrid cloud? How do I get from non-production to production? How do I validate those tests in an environment that is safe, that does not impact customers? And then how do I deploy it to production? The network topology itself, I want to make sure that my systems are secure, they are within my network, the right systems talk to the right services, and there are no loopholes. The right systems are connected out to the internet without any problems. What does my data pipeline look like? Because ultimately, once you build a solution product, you want to have a business intelligence angle to be able to really understand how the engagement with the platform or product is working and what I need to be building in the future as well. So how do you lay down all these pipelines? And lastly, the cost considerations. As I said, the cost of storage, the cost of processing power, all of these are key in making sure that you're building the right effective solution. And lastly, security, which is the most important aspect of all of this, especially if you are a B2B solution. How can I make sure if my customers are banks, or they care about PCI, they care about HIPAA and all these guidelines, how do I make sure the data that I'm sharing, the data of my customers that I have, are safe and secure? we have the right access controls, we have strict identity access management. The right people have access to the right systems, and not everybody has access to everything. Data segregation, like how do I make sure that if I have multiple customers in my B2B enterprise, how do I make sure one customer's data is separate from the other customer's data, and there is no sharing of information without explicit consent. Code analysis, continuing to make sure that we don't introduce vulnerability in the software, as well as continued monitoring, pen testing, and annual audits. So this checklist is definitely handy if you want to think about building a full, well-rounded solution. With that, I want to call upon Didi now to talk about where to go to find answers to some of these decisions, and how to get those answers, and how do you trust those answers. Welcome, Didi.
Thank you, Sushma. And when I saw Sushma's slides originally, I was blown away. I actually feel like we should have spent all the time with her, because she is so smart and has so many good things to say. Same with Chai. Thanks to both of you. I want to emphasize that everything they said was solid gold. So who am I? I've been in the tech industry since I was 19 years old, and I started in shareware probably before most of you were born. I currently work at a company called Mobilize.net. We founded it in 2012, and we transform old client server apps to the cloud, and we help businesses transform to SaaS. So what I want to talk about with you is, I don't know about you, but I often have major insecurities. I think they call it imposter syndrome, about how smart I am. Do I know enough about my job, my industry, all of the technology, the business issues? It goes on and on. So I wanted to tell you a quick story. Many years ago, when I was very new at Microsoft, I was working as a product manager, and we had our big Bill Gates meeting. It was to review the product I was working on. And the Bill G meeting was a big deal, and it was something that you prepared for weeks in advance, going over every minute detail, trying to figure out all the different questions that Bill would throw at you. And so we got to the meeting room, and we were about to start the presentation, and Bill said, stop. Before you do anything else, I want to ask a bunch of questions, and I want you to tell me exactly what I need to know about this area. It was an area that Microsoft wasn't in before. And Bill proceeded to ask some of the most basic questions. Some of it I had actually wanted to know, but I was worried I would look dumb if I asked. So I learned an important lesson that day that has stuck with me ever since, which is there's no shame in admitting you don't know everything, and there's no shame in asking for help. And I'm glad I learned that early in my career, because it has served me well. So my theme for you today is, you personally do not need to know everything. I was looking at all of the technologies that we use for cloud development, and it was pretty daunting. And so what I want to talk with you about today is what it takes to get the support, the guidance, and the answers you need to be successful. So I have 2 points I want to make about the development. The first is that no matter how high you are in the organization, you really need to always keep up with technology. We're all technology companies, so it shifts every few years or even shorter. So you need to be constantly on top of what's new. In fact, when we started our business, cloud was still kind of controversial, and some of our customers were resistant to using our cloud-based products, believe it or not. And especially with some of our more laggard customers. Obviously, nowadays cloud is a given, but had we decided to stick with the old stuff, we'd now be supporting old applications. And by the next technology shift, we could be out of business because of if you make if you decided decisions. So we win a lot of business by keeping up on technology. So you don't want to miss that. And the second thing is, that I want to talk about that's important, and it goes to my next slide, which we won't go to quite yet, but it's about building a network. And you know, I define my network very broadly, because what I've learned over my career is that I can only know a tiny bit of what I need, but there's a whole universe of people out there that fill in not only my knowledge gaps, but also my talent and skills gaps. So if you want to go to the next slide. So here's what and you can build the whole thing. Yeah, thank you. So here's what I want to say to you. Again, you don't have to know everything. Not only that, there are so many people who not only are very knowledgeable, but are also so willing to help. The question is, who can you trust? The good news is that our industry has so many really, really smart people. The harder question is really narrowing down your options. So today I want to talk with you about finding trusted sources of information and taking advantage of all the communities out there that are working together to help each other out. So on this slide, I've outlined the places I go, and this isn't a comprehensive list, but I've been doing this for a while. And so these are the ones that I feel like I've vetted out pretty good, and that I think are mostly nice and non-hostile communities. So let's talk first about the far left, which are the dev experts, and that's Stack Overflow, GitHub, HackerNoon, YouTube, and Medium. Those are the places I go to most to get my questions answered. Stack Overflow is the Quora for programmers. If you have a programming question, there is almost certainly an answer on Stack Overflow, and the best answer gets upvoted. So sometimes it's a little bit condescending up there, and disappointingly, there aren't very many women, but it's an amazing resource. And if you ignore the slightly negative stuff that comes up once in a while, you'll benefit from it immensely. So I highly recommend that. Likewise, GitHub is one of my favorite sites. I go to the GitHub Explore section every day just to see what's trending, and I learn so much, because the cool thing is that every company, particularly in the Microsoft and the .NET and Azure ecosystem, has products and code up there. I mean, there's more than that. That's a big one for that ecosystem. And I have downloaded so many cool little open source projects. And what I love about it is you can learn how other people solve technical problems. Seeing someone else's code is just magic for me. So that's why I love GitHub. And like I said, every big company has open source projects up there for you to learn from. HackerNoon is a great place to find smart people who are not only writing interesting and technical posts, but you also have the ability to search for experts. And just personally, we found 2 people who helped us with some really hard problems that we were having a hard time solving. So HackerNoon is great for that. And then YouTube, I won't talk too much about that. I know you're all familiar with YouTube. Suffice it to say, there's so much great content on YouTube. And of course, you can search on topic, plus you can see the ratings and comments to know what to trust. But if you're like me and you're a visual learner, I learn everything on YouTube. Whatever topic I'm interested, YouTube is my first go-to, because it's so great to see someone go through it. So and then Medium just has a lot of great, everybody writes on Medium. And again, if there's something you're interested in, there's almost 100% chance that someone's written something great about it. So these are the places I recommend most for dev experts, not only because you'll learn so much, but these are real people posting, and you can actually reach out to them and get to know them. I often hear about, you know, the sexism and misogyny in tech, but I think a lot of these folks who post are very approachable and trying hard to help other people. So let's talk for a minute about the community. The online technology communities are great. And I'm primarily in the Microsoft and .NET and Azure communities, which are very kind and accessible. mostly. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about each of these. I don't know how familiar you are with Meetup, but that's amazing. You can find user groups in your area for just about any technology. My company, we're entering a new market in data, and I found some local groups where they've already helped me to shortcut to so many answers to my questions. I'm basically 100 times smarter after the first meeting I attended. And we got some good recruiting advice as well from there. So Meetup is amazing, and if you haven't joined that, you should. It's a great one. And Twitch, which most of you, if you're familiar with it, you probably think of it as the weird gaming platform, but it's actually a very cool and burgeoning platform for tech streamers. And the great thing about Twitch is that it is a real community. You participate in the chat, and the streamer reads your comments, similar to what you're seeing here, and they respond real time. And so there will be live coders who will be coding, and they can answer your questions. It's just an amazing platform for learning and hanging out with other cool people. I have a whole posse up on Twitch that I hang out with all the time. Likewise, Twitter gets kind of a bad rap because of politics, but there's a totally vibrant technical community on Twitter. Tons of women, so many great women who are smart and very focused on lifting other women. I'm at DD Skier. I'll put that in the chat in a minute, and I'm happy to hook you up with other great women who are smart and fun and making cool things happen. And then finally, in the community area, Reddit is another platform that gets a bad rap. There's lots of weird stuff that goes on there. Most recently, I think everybody's probably heard about the GameStop debacle. But there are tons of great tech folks on Reddit. And it's another place that is indexed by technology and upvoted. I'm part of the .NET community, and every time I go up there, I learn something new. So there are so many great posts up there. Can't say enough good about Reddit. It's a great place to learn. And actually, if you're trying to promote your topics, Reddit's a great place to do that. I'll talk for a minute about associations. It's kind of a quirky one, but one of my great sources of a network comes from industry associations like .NET Foundation and Grace Hopper and some of those. The thing I like about associations is they offer great networking and recruiting opportunities. They offer you the ability to influence technology direction, and they generally have great technical resources and training options. So can't say enough good. If you can join an association that's associated with your area, you will benefit. I always do. And then my last area is, am I normal? And these are surveys. And there's nothing wrong with being not normal. So do you ever wonder if you're weird? Because I do. And what I like about the big survey sites like Developer Economics and Stack Overflow is that they have these huge surveys that survey thousands and thousands of people. And it's nice to know that you're doing it just like everyone else, or maybe you'll learn you're doing it different from everyone else, which can be enlightening as well. And I love seeing the tech trends, the developer profiles, the big issues that technology people care about. Several years ago, we were having issues getting traction with campus recruiting. And we saw that Python was trending really high in the developer economics survey. So we changed our messaging to be more Python friendly, and we received triple the number of applications that year. Unfortunately, all of our competitors saw that what happened, and so they copied us, but we got a year. The surveys are so valuable for helping you stay on top of tech. So anyway, so here's the gist of what I want to say to all of you. You are not alone. There are so many great people out there, and all of the various technology platforms make it possible to connect with everyone. And during COVID, it hasn't stopped any of that. So please reach out to me if you need help finding your posse. I'm glad to help, and it's been very fun to speak with all of you. Thank you. And I'm going to type in my Twitter if anybody wants to. That's me.
Sushma, Didi, come on the stage. So we'll go through the Q&A stuff. Fantastic presentation. I think I learned a lot just how to think about a mission-driven team or even a functional team, how to think about it. So I know there are lots of questions that's coming. Any question that you have, there are at least 6 of them. Please upvote. One of the things that is people are asking is how to keep up with technology or upcoming innovations with all the day-to-day responsibility. How do you go about doing that?
I get it. So I'm a runner. I get up at 5:30 every morning. I run, and then I come home and I look at, and I have my phone. Well, I don't drink coffee, but I drink stuff. And I spend my first, I try to be 30 minutes. Sometimes it's only 20. And that's what I do. Like I go on Reddit, I go on GitHub, I go on all of them. And it's not like I necessarily learn anything earth-shattering every day, but when you do it every day, then after a while, you know, you see the trends. In fact, we were years ago kind of skeptical of all the JavaScript frameworks, and our programmers kept saying Angular, 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 and every morning I'd read Angular, Angular, Angular on all of the areas I was reading, and we adopted that, and we've gained a bunch of business by making that decision.
Yeah, similarly, like I read a lot of blog posts, as Didi said, some of the great resources that she's posted here. And I usually I go for walks, or if I'm doing a workout, I usually try and listen in to some of these YouTube channels, or like even read a blog from dev.to or Ars Technica, some of those resources.
No, that's fantastic. Like, you know, when I'm looking at the technology, read about it, and I'm constantly like experimenting with it. It does what they say versus what you do. Does it make sense? Because you don't want to go into and investing in something and then it'll be so difficult to use it later, right? Because you need to, what technology they talk about, how cool it looks on paper, then when you execute it, sometimes it's crap, right? So you just need to have that way to keep up with understanding where the innovation, and also have a coalition around your business of who you're talking to. So they also give you kind of the innovations that are coming in the market. The other things is, Beenal, you do get a think book for really putting some amazing questions. So here is what I will ask you, Beenal, is to reach out to Sushma and Didi, because these are very deep questions. You probably need a one-on-one coffee time with them to get all the answers. The second one is, what technology blind spots have you discovered, and how do you regularly review where your blind spots may be lurking? Michael, fantastic question. I've never heard this one, but this is something I'm going to steal too. So Didi, Sushma.
I would say, so I'll tell you how I think about it. You know, again, I'm the person who, I know I don't know everything. So I have many blind spots. The one thing that we really thought about when we were forming our company, I wish it were country, our company, was the roles that were critical in our company, that if we didn't have them, we knew we would fail. And the one was like the CTO, or, you know, that chief technology person. We knew that we needed someone who we have a really geeky product, who could both code and lead. And so that's kind of like, I know that I need that role in the company, or my whole thing will be one big blind spot. And so I just know I have so many blind spots that I have to have a person or a group that I can rely on. That's my
Same. I think well said, Didi. I think having the right group and bringing the right folks together often in your company is very key in identifying blind spots. You cannot identify all of them, but as long as you have a strong team behind you, they can. So some of the things that we really try to encourage is like to form these technology working groups. So we have like a web working group, we have an API working group, we have native working group in our teams that meet like once every 2 weeks, and then they talk about all the new technologies that are happening and try to connect the dots between various things that are happening in the company. and try and identify blind spots that way.
No, that's fantastic. So my question to all the audience is, what did you learn from this discussion? And what are your takeaways? Go ahead and take a moment. What did you learn, Didi? What did you learn?
Well, both of you had great presentations. Sushma hits more of the things that really I actually have already, Sushma, apologies in advance. I've already sent your slides along to some folks. I've got some new people, and we don't, one thing we don't have is very good training. And I was saying to my team, we need to get this in a form where we can train. Yeah, anyways, thank you, Sushma. You actually gave me a good piece of information to pass on to my team. So that was
Thank
awesome.
you so much.
And Sushma is the same thing. On the DD is I sent the same screenshot to my team and said, okay, we are going to have this one starting Monday, and maybe we'll have Sushma come and teach us how to go about doing it. So you will be probably speaking to my team very soon. But Sushma, what did you learn?
I think for me, one, definitely some of the nuggets around like the template that you talked about, the various pricing models, how to even like think about positioning your business was amazing.
That
and then
template was awesome. And you're right, that takes it looks so simple and it takes forever.
Yeah, I was like, this is so easy. And now this is something that I've struggled with for so long. When you simply put, and then Aditi, your resources were amazing. And I think definitely I had not thought about like Association for Women in Computing and all of that stuff. Like even the surveys, I think those are something that I'm going to go try out and send it to my engineers as well.
Yeah, the developer economics one is very interesting because they have all of these technologies. It's each one just has a slightly different way of thinking about things. And I tend to be very focused on my little Microsoft world, so it's fun to branch out a little bit.
Perfect. So we are at 7 more minutes before we go into happy hour. Who's joining the happy hour? Because my mind is already there for the stand-up comedy and having fun there. Who's joining us? Sushma, are you? Okay.
I have
anybody in the chat? Anybody who's joining the happy hour? Okay.
And I ordered a pizza. Anybody come over to my house? I got pizza.
I'm coming, Didi, next week. Excellent. So there are a few things next tomorrow. We are going to have is the STEM-based youth entrepreneurship. I want all of you to be there if you want to really mentor the youth. We are going to do a closing ceremony. We have broken all the records we can think about with the virtual summit because we have more than 18 countries joining this one.
Holy cow, look at you, Chai.
Yeah, and yes, I did have my wardrobe change for the happy hour, if you noticed. I did.
Oh, you did? Good on you. Look at you. You think of everything.
Yes, and for all the people who did the chat Q&A, that is Bino, and then I have is Carolyn Minsterman, and the last one is Niru Gupta. All three of you get the Think Book. So great questions, and we will come up with an answer, probably do a blog post on this one. And have both of you come to the Women in Cloud sessions and really educate the entrepreneurs as well as somebody who's building the solution. And I would love to have is any final thoughts you have for the audience before we wrap up and go to the happy hour. My mind is there right now.
Are you ready to?
Yeah, already at my I have it.
I have one thought.
Yes.
Sorry. I'm going to be blue. So one last thought. When I first started in the industry, and I can remember I'd go to all these different events, and people would tell you, you have to do this and don't ever do that, and kind of all these things. And I remember thinking, oh crap, I did that. Like the thing they said, don't ever do that. I did it, and it worked. Like it worked. And so what I would say to you is, that everybody has advice and what works for them, and they'll often tell you things as though it's this binary yes and no, and we all know that like it's great to break rules. It just figure out what works for you, and don't take, don't think that anything is gospel, but
Totally.
do what works for you. So
Totally.
anyway, I found that breaking rules work just fine.
Absolutely, Didi. Sushma.
Yeah, I think I agree with Didi. The one thing that I'll add is like definitely leverage the power of your network. A lot of the decisions that I've made in my career has been like things that I don't know about, and I still have to make some of those decisions. And I've leveraged my network. I've reached out to my peers or even like industry leaders and asked for their advice and gotten like 2 or 3 different opinions before I form my strategy. So definitely don't hesitate to ask. I think there are a lot of people with a lot of knowledge, and they would love when people actually reach out to them and connect. And
Sherry said there that most people are willing to help. I am shocked at how magnanimous people are. How great people! So much of the time you hear about how crappy people are, but overwhelmingly people are great.
I totally agree with you, Didi. So with that, I would say the parting comments from me is the collective power rules, and all of you are part of the collective power. Join us at the happy hour. So Blake, add in the link so you can directly be transported there. And let's go have fun and meet Didi and Sushma and me. We will be all together dancing. And if anyone wants to come on the stage with the stand-up comedy experience, raise your hand. We'll get you on the stage. With that, thank you, everyone. What a fantastic 2 days it has been. And both of you, Didi, Sushma, fantastic content. And I want to work with you more to do these kind of sessions. It's brilliant.
Thank you. As always, do an amazing event. Thank you.
Okay,
really
bye. Take care.
Thank you.